Hi everyone, this is Zen here, and what I was going to do is, I said last time I'd touch on lower body mechanics, and what we're going to get into is what's causing the problems in Harry's kinetic link, Smiley's kinetic link, and what we're going to, we'll touch on that, but briefly I just want to clear the air with a couple of things. Is that, we hear this word stalling in the industry, and we've heard it for quite a long time, and I just want to explain to people what we see on 2D video doesn't truly indicate what we're doing, okay? Because the biggest thing that 2D video can't effectively do is measure rotations, and it only measures 2 planes of motion, whereas human motion and the golf swing works in 3 planes of motion. So what I mean by 2 planes of motion, with a 2D video, you've got your x-axis and you got your y-axis. Okay, what 2D can't measure is depth, so we can't measure z like this. Okay, so it can't measure z coordinates this way or this way. Okay, so if someone drifts this way or they drift that way, you really, you get this weird illusion on 2D that that occurs. It gives a false indication of what really is going on. So what I'll quickly show you is that you could consider Harry as what they deem as a staller, right? So if we have a look at him, okay, so if we look at his downswing, it looks quite rotational there, but it really is. But now, okay, it looks like he's a staller. Okay, it looks like he's a staller. All right. But if you have a look at it and see where his hips, see how they look like they're pretty well square to the target, don't they? When you look at that in 2D, looks like the shoulders are. But if we have a look over to the left here, if you take a notice here, can you see how open far left his hips are? They're open left. Okay. So really, when you look at this, you think, oh, he's not rotating his hips open left to the target enough. And then in hindsight, he'd start work on trying to get his hips to open left even more. But in reality, the true problem is that his hips are actually spinning out in his golf swing. Okay, so let's have a quick look at that and explain that and have a look why that's occurring. Okay, so what we'll do is we'll bring up his data quickly. Okay, so this is the lower body mechanics. Okay, this is this was his initial test. Okay, so what you got to understand is, I'll just explain this so you understand that 0 means, so when you've got the feet, okay, and there, the hips are at 0. Okay, when it goes up into the positive numbers, it means the backswing's rotated 40 degrees. Okay, when this line goes up, it means acceleration, and then when the line goes down, it heads back to 0. So what that means is the hips are rotating back towards 0, and then when it goes into these numbers here, it indicates how far open left of the target the hips are open. Okay, so with this here, if you take a notice, can you see that the hips start accelerating, they change direction, and then see how this red line keeps on going. Now when the red line keeps on going, what that means is means the hips are spinning out through impact. Essentially what you'd want to see is a pattern like this. Is what you'd want to see is, you see that, I'll explain this a little bit later, but as soon as he presses and then this straightens out, as soon as he presses, you'd get an acceleration like this that changes direction, okay, and then it squares out. And when it squares out like that, what that means is the lower body is stabilized at impact. Okay, and that's important, and we'll get into that another time. And when the line goes straight, it means that he's created the right ground forces. The lower body is stabilized, so he's rotating into his right leg, into his left leg, and now you can turn around the axis of your spine quite effectively. Okay, if this is drifting or that leg's moving and the spine keeps on drifting, well, it's very hard to turn around the axis of your spine. Okay, alright, so it's really important that it's stabilized so we can rotate around our spine a lot more effectively. Okay, so what happens with Harry is that because he's in a mechanical disadvantage here, okay, so he's got an external rotation, as I said last time, and he's locked on that leg. Now, there's variances, but there's so many different breakdowns from this position, you know. However, in order for Harry to get off that right leg, so he can get into a better position to push into the ground, because he's locked on that leg, he's got to try and shift his weight. So what he's going to try and do is he'll essentially either try to spin or slide from this position. What Harry essentially does is he spins his hips. Okay? And what I want you to remember is this one law. Once you initiate motion, you cannot stop it unless there's a force acting upon it. It's a golden rule, and please remember it. So if Harry's hips start spinning, right, and he's got no force acting upon it, they're going to keep on spinning. Okay? So as soon as Harry starts spinning his hips, the only way that he can try and slow them down, is once he spins, he starts to try and slide his body as well. Okay, and you see right here now, his pelvis comes out, he's trying to slide his body so his arms can catch up so he can release the club head. Also, I said in the kinetic link, so if we go back here, so if we have a look at his kinetic link here, okay, what you can see is that his hips start spinning, getting faster and faster and faster and faster, so he slides his hips to slow him down so that his upper body can try and catch up, okay, so as soon as that starts to slide, the upper body can catch up to him, and so his arms and the club release can catch up, okay, so essentially too, he also throws the club away and tries to accelerate his arms as well as a compensation to try and catch up with what his lower body's doing. Okay, because he spins his hips, you can't stop it. Okay, so what our project was with Harry is we had to teach him how to connect to the ground so that you can use the ground to accelerate the hips and decelerate the hips so the upper body can catch up. Okay, so we'll go to that graph and have a look. Okay, so what we've got here is we've got the his lower body mechanics. Okay, what we've got here is his lower body mechanics, and I'll just explain, like I explained before, what the hip rotation was, and I'll explain what this blue line is that the blue line is the representation of the center of mass. Okay, and it's the center of mass. Positive numbers towards a target, negatives away. Okay. Now, when the center of mass, what happens is you've got the center of pressure. Okay, and you'll see this. It's equilibrium. There's a mathematical formula. I won't go into that. But essentially, when you've got even weight on both feet, the center of pressure stays here. As Harry rotates back and he presses in the ground this way and this way, you've got shear force go that way and that way. You've got shear force go this way and go this way. Essentially, we pushed, and we've got normal force go down into the ground. So essentially, as Harry pushes down in the ground and he pushes this way and that way, when you rotate back, you internally rotate and the center of pressure drifts back this way. Okay? And when the center of pressure drifts back that way, it causes the force in his feet to go this way, and it causes the ground to push back at you at this direction. Okay? And that's really important because the more you create forces this way and this way, the harder the ground pushes back at you to make the lower body rotate towards the target. Okay? The same with this way. The more you push this way and this way, the ground pushes back at you, and again it pushes on. Essentially, I'll just erase that. Essentially, what it does is this force pushes on. It puts force, it makes the hip rotate that way, and then you get a force on the back of the hip, and that creates rotation. Okay, so in the backswing, it's really important how you connect to the ground, and you create those ground forces that I was speaking of. Okay, so what Harry used to do is just explain with this center of mass. Is he essentially, when you see this acceleration go up, is he spun his hips and they kept on spinning and spun out through the impact zone. Because he pressed late, what he didn't do is he actually slid his hips to try and wash off that lower body speed. Okay? The improvements that we made with Harry and what we worked on, can you see now this is flatlined? Okay, so when it's flatlined, that means there's no rotation there. But see how now, as soon as the blue line you start to see a press of the center of mass pressing, or you know the center of mass. Now, when the ground pushes back, the center of pressure starts heading towards the target. Okay, and that's what this essentially means. Okay, as soon as that starts heading towards the target, his hips change direction, start accelerating towards the target. Okay. He still slides a little bit, however, but he's pressing pretty well. But he's not quite creating enough downward force at the moment, or shear forces this way or this way at present time to get the ground to push back at him hard enough to make the hips accelerate and decelerate. So what we've overall improved with Hayes, we've improved him connecting to the ground on his backswing, and we're starting to get the ground to push back at him. Now we've got to try and get the ground to push back at him on this side more evenly to create an equal opposite force reaction to make the hips accelerate, decelerate. Okay, so when okay, so what the plan is now is as I said, is we're going to work on the forces going this way and this way, downward forces as well. So now he's got the ground pushing back at him quite well in his backswing. Remember, I showed that right leg, and don't worry about that right leg flexion. We'll show you in a minute. Because the ground's starting to push back at him now, and it's making the lower body begin to, it's starting to stay put. He's not locking on his right leg now. We've got to increase that force, and we've got to increase this equal opposite force reaction. So what happens is when the hips accelerate and decelerate, it's very important why, is when the hips accelerate, okay, and as the upper body and arms are still going back in the golf swing, okay, sorry about my drawing. Essentially, as the upper body and the arms are completing the backswing, the ground pushes back at you, and in transition they deliberately start rotating the other way. What happens is it stretches the muscles from diagonally in the core, and what happens is they begin to stretch. The reason the deceleration patterns are very important is when the lower body slows down, when you push into the ground, it makes it slow down, you can then contract the core to accelerate the upper body. And also when the lower body slows down, that speed that it was producing has got to go somewhere, so it goes up in the spine. Okay, so when you see the kinetic link, the hips accelerate, slow down, and then you see the upper body double in speed, is because the speed transferred from the hips goes up and travels up into the spine, out through the shoulders, and plus the contraction of the muscles, that contractional speed combined with the speed sent up through the spine, it doubles the speed of the shoulders. Okay, so I hope you begin to understand a little bit why the lower body mechanics is so important. Okay, it's one is to create the acceleration of the hips to stretch the muscle in the core, and the deceleration patterns is so the lower body can also, so the upper body can also contract the muscles in the upper body. Okay, and also it creates spine stability. Okay, so the final one, I'll end it on this. The final one is that if the lower body stabilises at impact and you internally rotate into this right leg, okay, so if that right leg stays there and you turn into that, and your left knee stays flexed, okay, if you internally rotate into this, and this isn't sliding, it allows you to rotate around your spine more effectively. I mean, I know you're pitched over, but essentially it allows you to rotate around the spine. The straighter the spine, the better the better that you can rotate around the axis of your spine, the more speed you can recruit. Okay, so, and also the less force you put on the back and the less lower body mechanics. Okay, so I hope this gives a brief understanding on the lower body mechanics. I hope that was it is a complex thing to explain, but I hope you understand now that by how we push and pull against the ground, one, it creates lower body stability on the backswing, and then the ground pushes back at us, so it makes the hips rotate towards the target. It's not something we have to do. And then when we push harder into the ground, we create those forces. It creates a deceleration pattern so you can contract the muscles in the core. So I hope you understand better now why we want to create better lower body mechanics. I'll just quickly show you a difference. Okay, so if we have a look now, we can see now that he's in a better position. So what I'll just finally recap and explain is that now he's in a better position here. Okay, he's not locked on that hip. When he pushes this way and this way, and there's also down in the ground, he pushes down the ground this way, and he pushes that way and this way. Now the ground's pushing back at him better, and there's still work to do. Now he's got stability, okay? And now what it is we've got to increase that force so it even pushes harder at him to make his hips rotate faster. And also what we've got to do is teach him push this way and this way so the ground pushes back at him, okay? So then he creates stability. So during his downswing. So on the downswing, if we just have a quick look. Now just take notice now if you start having a look at things just here, is that now he's starting to get better lower body mechanics here. He can start to rotate around his spine more effectively. Okay, where it sort of kills him a bit, it's pretty good just to here, but because he's still sliding his hips a little bit through that impact zone, and we've still got to improve that. Let's just have a look at that. Okay, now his pelvis is starting to slide on him. Now he's starting to go into extension, so it's sort of hard to see from this view, but he's starting to actually go into extension. So if we're looking down the target this way, he's starting to do this now. Okay, and then also what he's starting to do is he's starting to go into lateral bending this way as well. So sorry, that's a really bad drawing. So he's starting to do this in his spine. Okay, so he's starting to get a kink in his spine as well. Okay, so and that's also, he does that as well to wash off his upper body speed so his arms can catch as well. So there's sort of different reasons that lower body sliding causes the kinking of the spine, and we'll touch on that next video. And also he's trying to wash off speed so he can try and get his arms to catch up as well. So so he's pretty good, but as soon as he starts sliding, he starts losing his positions a bit, good mechanical positions. So if we have a look here, he's in really good position here, this part here, his ground forces are pretty good here, as we can see, but there's still some problems down the impact zone. So you can lose your ground forces in different durations during the downswing and the backswing. So if we watch through impact here, now he loses his ground forces just around here because he's still not pushing. Essentially he's essentially not pushing hard enough this way or this way, and he's not getting the ground to push back at him. There is some leg strength issues that are causing it, and also there's some connection with the ground issues as well. So he loses it, and his body spins out and slides on him as well. So at the beginning of his downswing, he's got to press harder. During the halfway down, right up just to prior to impact until about here, just a few frames before this, he was good, and now this is where he really loses it. So it's amazing that you can lose your ground forces in different durations of your golf swing. So now, bang, he's lost his ground forces. Okay, his left leg straight, not that that's ever really a good indication, but his pelvis is spun out, and there's a little bit work to do yet. So now our focus is to improve him to create acceleration patterns of his lower body mechanics and stop losing the ground forces down through the impact zone. So what we've got to do there is we've got to also just give him a little bit better glute activation, better strength in the legs. Okay, so we've got to do a bit of gym conditioning, and also we've got to do some ground force training, ground reaction force training, give him some drills to actually train those equal opposite force reactions that I was talking about this way, to make to create better stability in the lower body so it stops sliding and spinning, and also to create better hip acceleration. So I hope this explains everything a bit further, and next series I'll explain the upper body spine stability and the problems there. Thank you for listening. Bye. Hi everybody, this is Zen here, and now we're going to touch on Harry's spine stability, and we're going to help you guys understand a bit more about the spine stability and how and this just isn't for golf, you can apply this to tennis or any rotational sport, rotational movement. Golf's just on a pitched, on what they call an inclined plane, or just pitched over, or in a flexion position, just bent over the ball. The same rotational movements, the same muscles are used as what you do in tennis or baseball or whatever. But there's differences, small variations, but essentially you've got to understand the insertion origins of muscles are connected to the bones a certain way. So to create rotational movements, the same similar sort of things. So we're going to touch on how rotate around the spine affects it, and we're going to get you to understand it. And I know all this stuff seems technical. Just a quick one, what I really want to say is that this is my job to worry about all this stuff. I'm just bringing you a perspective of what I have to look at as what I do in my field, and the things that we're facing and how technical it can be. And human motion is very complicated. It's not as easy as what we all think it is. So when an athlete comes to me, they don't have to worry about this stuff. We just brief on what their breakdowns are, give them in their terms, and then we give them training that trains these patterns, and their job's to apply. They don't need to know this stuff. They've just got to, their job's to do the training and let me worry about this stuff. Okay, but what they do need to know is the progressions, and they need to know there's a plan in place and moving forward down the track that we're working to improve things and why we're doing it, and and they can see the development, so they understand why they're doing the training. Okay, so enough on that. Just a quick one. So what we're going to talk about is the lateral bending, and just to recap last time is that we talked about Harry being locked onto his right leg, and then we showed that how we improved his lower body mechanics, so he was in a better mechanical position. Okay, and we explained how he was spinning out his hips and how he was sliding them, and we touched a bit on stalling, that even though the body looks like it's stalling, it can still spin out and the hips can still slide. The other variance that I think where most people can get a bad misconception about the stalling is it's the upper body, and it's because of the kinking of the spine. And when you see golfers where their arms, they're like this, and you see their arms, you see their arms fly off their body in that direction. Okay, I'll explain that later, but it's really to do with the kinking of the spine. So it's not like they're trying to stall their body. It's not because of modern teaching. It's a breakdown in their movement, and that's what I want to get through. And when you get in the high, when you get with when you get with the high-end golfers, and you got someone like Tiger or any of these guys, they're moving the rotation around their spine. They're creating super high speeds, faster than what we do. The average tool population's 113 miles per hour club head speed. I mean, that's moving it. And the upper body, they move at ridiculous speeds. Like, we're talking about these shoulders rotating at 800 degrees per second. It's just incredible speeds. So when you add speed to something, okay, and if you remember what I said, once you initiate motion, you can't stop it unless you've got a force acting upon it. And I'll touch on that and why those tool players do it. So it's not a swing, it's not anything to do with really, to do with the way they're being taught. It's to break down their movements. And they're only subtle little movements that they're making, because there's so much speed attached to it, it amplifies the problem. Okay? So there's ways of improving that, but it's not as easy as what we think it is, And the thing with working with tool players that people have got to understand is that when you get with those high-end guys, you've got to subtly change them, because if you make too big a changes with them, they start and it changes the dynamics of how they play golf, so their ball flight laws and everything, then you're going to confuse them. It took Tiger Woods 4 years to make the changes that he did, okay, but he went gun-ho, But you subtly, and some of them guys, it could be a 5 to 10 year project to subtly improving them guys. Some guys want to go all for it. others just subtly change it. So you've got to balance that up. So it's a lot more complex when you get to, athletes worth millions of dollars, because essentially they've got pressures where they're worth a ton of money, and they've got to perform, and that's what they're paid to do, and they're paid to win. As soon as they put a logo on their body, they're representing that company, and they've got to win. Okay, and that if you start messing with those things, and they've got a winning combination, and they want to make improvements, and you've got to ensure that they keep on winning. So you've got to sometimes subtly. So when you get the high-end guys, a lot more complicated guys. Okay. So what we'll quickly have a look at is we'll have a look at quickly have a look at some data on Harry before and after. Okay. And what I'm going to do is educate you a little bit about how this all works, so you understand the data a bit better. Okay. So this yellow line, what this means, there's 0. Now, this person's facing us. So if we're looking at this is his left shoulder, this is his right shoulder. Now, if he bends to the left shoulder goes down, right shoulder goes up. That's called lateral bending. Okay, so 0, when it goes to 12, it means the left lateral bended like that, 12 degrees. So the spine's kinking 12 degrees. Does that make sense? Okay, when we go to 0 and we go into the negative numbers, it means right lateral bending. Okay, so again, we've got 0. Right shoulder goes down, left shoulder goes up. Okay, so when it means 28 degrees, it means that the right shoulder, the spine is kinked in here 28 degrees. Okay, what's important is we've got to rotate around the axis of the spine. Okay, all right. So I hope that makes sense. Alright, so now let's just go and have a look. So now you understand that a little bit. When we look at Harry's goal swing, okay, in his backswing, okay, essentially we want to rotate around the axis of the spine. Okay, now each facet in the spine recruits a little bit of range of motion. So if you kink it, any kinking this spine, you lose range of motion in the spine. Okay. Alright, so any bending whatsoever is going to do it. So our goal is to try and turn as best we can around the axis of the spine, bent over in a pitch position. Okay, so in Harry's backswing, okay, so his backswing's here, okay, from here to here's backswing, okay, he goes into a little bit of extension, okay, so he does this, he lifts up, okay, so if his shoulders are that way, right, he goes extension that way. Okay, so he's getting arching his back. Okay, so I hope that makes sense. Also, what he does, he goes into left lateral bending. So he also, not only is he doing this, but if we're looking down the target line, his spine's doing this as well. Okay, so he's got two types of bending going on. Alright, so how does that affect Harry, and why does it look like his arms are flying off the body, and why does it look like he's going, it looks like he's stalling? Okay, let's just go to his video and have a quick look, and we can see, get a visual and get a better understanding. Okay, so what was happening is that, it's very hard to see in 2D, but what essentially happens is when this left shoulder drops down, you contract these muscles in here, right? And then these muscles over the back here, they become stretched. Okay, so on this side, so you imagine, okay, if we're looking face on, looking down the line, and essentially like this, these muscles get contracted, these muscles get stretched. Okay, so when he starts his downswing, what do you think is going to happen? These muscles are going to contract. Okay, so when he's from here, what he's going to try and do, automatically to rotate around his spine, he's going to try and straighten it first, isn't he? Because it's kinked, it's locked. Okay, so what he's going to try and do is he's going to try and straighten it up so then he can rotate around it. Now, just remember what I said, the golden rule. Once you initiate motion, you cannot stop it unless you've got a force acting upon it. Same applies. Okay, so when he contracts these muscles, right, and he's in this position, right, and you add speed to it, so his upper body's moving at, just say 600 degrees per second. As soon as he contracts that, what's his right shoulder going to do? It's going to start going down. Okay, all right. So they're going to start contracting. So what's going to happen? Now, if we go back to what I said, remember when I said last time that we want to contract these muscles in here. Essentially, Harry isn't using these muscles, so we're going to train him to use these muscles to contract to rotate around the spine. So what we're going to essentially do is, now we've improved his lower body mechanics, okay, so that he's more stable. Now, and we're working on his upper body to rotate around his spine better. Now he can begin to contract these muscles. So if we have a quick look on this one here, now he's in a better position. Now you can see the shoulders, not as much left lateral bending. Now he can rotate around that spine better. Okay, so now we can start training and contract these muscles. Okay, he's still doing it in his data, and I'll show you in a minute. He's still contracting those other muscles over there because there's still a bit of left lateral bending going on, but we will improve that. Also, there's a bit of core weakness on here, and because these muscles are a lot stronger in here, when those muscles contract, these muscles don't have a chance. So that's where, core strength, when they refer to that, it's the contraction of the core strength. And I mean, that's another complicated thing. We won't get into that. Okay, so if we go into his downswing and have a look, if you watch over here, you watch now, you watch his left shoulder go up and his right shoulder go down. Can you see now that he's contracted that side? So if we go back a few frames, now what I said he did, he does. Okay, we've got muscular loading for all this, guys. I'm not going to get into that to measure the muscles. Okay, so now what he's starting to do is he's starting to contract this muscle. Now if we go a bit further up, okay, can you see how this one's now stretching and now that one there's contracting? Okay, he's not using this whatsoever. Okay, now watch as he comes into impact. You watch how contracted this becomes, because remember, he's adding speed. This is contracting with speed. Okay, because he's trying to rotate his shoulders. That speed that he's contracting, it's moving downward, not around his spine. Does that make sense? I hope that makes sense. Okay, so now what you can see is this side's contracted, right, and that side's stretched. Okay, now the arms, why they fly off the body out this way for, okay, is see where he's and you can see it moving out that way a bit. Essentially, because this is kinked, right, you can't, the hips and shoulders should be square to each other. Okay, if you look at Norman, Price, Baldo, those guys that our companies work with, their hips and shoulders are square to each other but open left, so that allows the arms to work left. But because his spine's kinked, okay, and it kinks there, well, momentum's going to throw the arms out that way, because he can't work his arms left because the spine's kinked. Okay, and that's because of the contraction of the muscle. So it's a movement pattern issue, and that's what happens with tool players. But however, tool players don't have as bad lateral bending as Harry. But if you imagine that if you're in lateral bending just 5 degrees here, okay, and that left shoulder's down a bit, and then they contract this muscle, these muscles here, moving it, and we're looking this way, sorry, and they're moving at 800 degrees per second, if not faster. Can you imagine only 5 degrees and this contracts fast? What's the spine going to do? It's going to do that. Okay, so most of these guys, when you see the arms fall off the body, because they're swinging at greater speeds now than what they did in the old days, this problem's a bit more problematic. And it's when you've got to get them in the gym, you've got to strengthen their core, teach these core contractions that I talk about in here. That's when them guys have got to start hitting the gym. It's a lot of reasons why they hit the gym as well. Okay, so I hope that makes sense. And the arms just fly. They can't rotate around the spine. Essentially, you want the club to rotate around the spine this way, but they cannot do that if you get kinking the spine. Okay, And it's the contraction of the muscles called stalling. It's nothing to do with upright golf clubs. It's nothing to do with anything else. It's a breakdown of movement. Lower body mechanics, remember, does have a play. Okay, so now, so if we just go back to the data and have a look. So now what we've done with Harry, see, he used to get up to about, it was about 17 degrees. 17 degrees, right? Now we've got him only 11 degrees left lateral bending. Okay, so now, even though he's pitched over, right, he's getting 11 degrees of left lateral bending, which isn't near so bad, so he's not going to get as much of this going on. He's still going to get a little bit, but nowhere near as bad. Okay, so as we improve this, okay, so now he's starting to rotate, he's starting to maintain staying in that position though. Okay, so essentially starting to rotate better, even though there's a little bit of kinking going on, he's maintaining it. He's not going further and further and further, which is a good thing. Okay. If we look at the pitched over position, now he's maintaining. Before he used to be 19. Now he's maintaining 20. Now he's maintaining 25. So he's staying pitched over 25 degrees. Okay. And now he's starting to rotate around that spine better because we've improved his lower body mechanics and we're starting to teach him to use the muscles in his body right to rotate around his spine better. Okay, so that's the improvements. On his downswing, as I said, remember this contraction, see that's the extension. Okay, so he's going that way. Okay, and that's that excessive lateral bending. So remember with the muscles here, that's that. The extension I'll sort of skip because that's really complicated. I'll quickly touch on that just so you understand why. When they're extension this way, again you've got to think about it this way. The stomach muscles and that are all stretched. These muscles here are contracted. Okay, so in his backswing, if he's like this, with his spine and that's pointing, the belly's stretched, the back's contracted, right? When he starts his downswing, what's he going to do? He contracts the muscles downward, not diagonally. So if we have a quick look at his data, that's why he goes into massive flexion into the ball, so he falls out of it, and then he goes into extension again, okay? Because the muscles contract, and because he falls so much into it, it's sort of crazy. This is getting a bit too deep for you guys. But what happens is that, you know, he falls in the ball, and again, because these contract so much, okay, and they become shortened, well then these become stretched and they lift him up again, so he goes into extension of the ball. Okay, it's complex, don't worry about that. It's just alright, we're taking care of that, that's all that matters. Alright, so I hope you guys are starting to understand the complexities of this. So now what we'll look at is now he's getting into 0, and now at impact he's around about, he's still 25, okay, and he still gets a little bit of extension going on, and he still gets a little bit of flexion, but you know, now it's only 8 degrees. Before he was going, so he's going about 15 degrees. There's significant changes in this, the pattern. So essentially, you know, what we want to see with Harry is we want to see this pattern, dead straight, and maybe a little bit of extension. With this, we want to see it more like this, and then like that. And it goes like that. And when the line straightens out, what that means is that he's going to get better. You know, what it perfectly means is that they're just rotating perfectly around their spine like this, essentially. Okay, so he's moving towards that pattern. It's getting better. So we've got to work on getting rid of that. And again, that's to do with his lower body mechanics and so forth. So I hope that you know, this all makes sense. I've sort of lost my way a little bit, guys. I'm sorry. But because there's so much to get through. So essentially, I hope that you understand what Harry's doing. So if we look at him now, you can see the significant improvements. That you can see he's rotating better around his spine there, and then There's still a little bit here, and there's a little bit of extension going on, and we'll work on that. Again, it's to do it for lower body mechanics as well, and it's to do it for spine. And you know what kills all that is just because in a bad mechanical position at the top, where you know again he's in that left lateral bending, so these are contracted and that stretch nowhere near as bad, but there's still enough contraction there to pull that down. But as we work on his core and we keep on work on those lower body mechanics, then he can rotate around the spine better. So just to recap so you guys understand is that, you know, to create rotation around the spine, and I'll get into the muscular loading why, is that essentially we want to turn around the spine so we can contract these muscles, okay? We want no contractions on these sides, okay? And we want no contraction on this side whatsoever, okay? And then when that contracts, you can rotate around your spine better. Anyway, thank you for listening, and I hope that helps understand spine stability a bit better. It is complex, and you know I'll update with Harry what he's going, but I hope you understand now the complexities, all that, the importance of the ground, again what causes stalling, and I hope you enjoyed the video. Thank you. Hi everybody, this is Zen here, and I've done a couple of videos. I've done 3 videos now, and you know I recommend people go back and watch them. The first one was a kinetic link. The second one was explaining lower body mechanics. The third one was stability, and now I'm going to talk about the muscles, and you'll start to see how this all comes together and why we measure all this stuff and the importance of it. And if we're going to learn to move our bodies better, we really should measure it, because there's so many things that go on that we just can't see. And even with my knowledge, I would never ever give anyone any training to change their patterns without measuring to know what's really going on first. And then, you know, mainly the measurement gives me a plan of what I've got to do to make the changes, and then I retest and monitor that those changes are occurring or moving in the right direction. And we know that they're starting to use the right muscles that we want them to use. Okay, it's important you're able to measure those muscles because a ton of things can go on. So just a quick overview to explain the muscular loading and explain why the ground force are important, and you'll start to understand why this is all important, is that what I quickly want to explain is stalling has nothing to do with it. When things slow down, they have to slow down. Okay, the muscles contract and things slow down. So they stretch, they contract, and they slow down. So they'll reach a maximum speed, the muscle will reach a maximum speed and will slow down. And if anyone goes to the gym, they'll sort of understand that when they first do a press or they do a bench press, they explode at the start, and the time they get to the top or full extension, they slow down. Okay, so if you understand gym, you'll understand that, you know, this all makes sense. But what essentially happens is that, you know, when you create the right ground forces that go this way, that way, and this way, you get that equal opposite force reaction coming back at you. I touched back on. So initially what happens is, as you're going back during the backswing, the upper body and the arms keep on going back. When the ground pushes back at you just before transition and during transition, the hips turn the other way and accelerate towards the target. So this is upper body's going back, the hips go towards the target. And what happens is it's a burst of acceleration. The faster the acceleration applied to the muscle, the better the stretch. It's not about how much rotation. You only need a few degrees of rotation to do this. It's about how much speed you apply to that muscle. And the greater the speed or the greater the load, it's like doing a gym. The greater the load you apply to that muscle, the more you can explode it up. Or that's how you strengthen and make muscles faster. It's the same, that the more speed you add to that muscle, the greater the stretch, and the more it's what we call a chemical energy, elastic energy. And that elastic energy, the more you create that, the faster contraction comes. So the hips are quickly, as the upper body goes back and the lower body starting to rotate towards the target very fast, it accelerates very quickly and the muscles stretch. Now what you want, this is very important, you want the lower body to quickly decelerate so you don't lose that chemical energy, so you can contract the muscles in the core. Okay, alright, it contracts the muscles in the core and that accelerates the upper body. Alright, now with the arms, now with the arms, what happens is that it's a little bit more complex. You've got the right arm, and it goes into external rotation, and it winds up and loads. We won't get into that too much, but with the arms, the same again is that what happens is when the lower body starts turning the other way and the upper body's still going back in the backswing, okay, because these are stretched, it forces the upper body to change direction. Okay, and that's what sort of explains Sergio Garcia's loop that he's got. The same applies, is that the arms, when the upper body changes direction, the arms sort of still go back. Okay, and then when the upper body starts rotating towards the target, it stretches all the muscles in the lats and the deltoids and in the right arm. And we won't get into the right arm because it's very complex. Okay, so when the upper body starts rotating towards the target, when these muscles stop contracting, okay, the upper body slows down. These muscles here that are stretched, okay, they then accelerate the arms into the impact zone, but around the axis of your spine. Okay, so that's very important you understand that, and I hope that makes sense. Okay, now when the arm muscles stop contracting, okay, so it gets like this. Okay, so when these muscles in here are contracted and the arms accelerate towards the impact, when these muscles are finished contracting and even the right arm, okay, it straightens, okay, what happens is they slow down. So as soon as the arms slow down, it makes the club snap away from the wrist. Okay, so what happens with this, you've got two things that create a kinetic link. How this all bolts together for the kinetic link is that it's conservation momentum. You know, I mean, there's big arguments about that. There isn't, and you know, it's just a way of explaining. Okay, it's more complex. There's grey areas in this, but when the speed from when the hips accelerate, decelerate, they've got to go somewhere. So they travel up into the spine. So you imagine you create 300 degrees of the hips, and just say the core muscles create 300. Okay, that equals 600 degrees per second. Alright, that goes out through the shoulder. So the hip speed, when it slows down, that speed's got to go somewhere, so it shoots up through the spine. Then these core muscles, okay, accelerate, decelerate, the speed's got to go somewhere, so, well, in actual fact, it makes the shoulders rotate. That speed goes up through the shoulders, okay, so you got the 600 degrees per second. The arms, when the muscles stretch in the arms, okay, that when the upper body slows down, the speed gets transferred out through the arms, okay, so that's 600. And because the arms are smaller and lighter, just say those muscles and the lats and the delts really get them arms singing, the muscles create 600 degrees per second. So that speed added together gives it 1200 degrees per second. Okay? Alright. Then when the arms slow down, okay, that 1200 degrees per second plus the club already moving, you know, just say it's already moving it, you know, moving it whatever, that 1200 degrees plus when the club snaps away from the wrist combined, just say it creates, you know, another 600 degrees per second, okay, that equals 1800 degrees per second. I mean, it's a bit more than that, but it's just giving you an idea, okay, so everything sort of doubles in momentum. Alright, and that's why the kinetic link's important. If things don't slow down, you can't transfer energy out through that club, okay. You know, if you keep on spinning your hips, the speed will stay in the hips. You're not delivering that energy to the ball. Okay? So, let's just have a quick look at Harry, and let's have a look at the differences with him and how we measure the muscles and how we've improved that. Just so you understand what a good graph would look like is, we'll do it over here, is that when the hips accelerate and slow down, okay, and then the upper body accelerates, okay, and it slows down, okay. So what will happen is, as soon as the hips accelerate, this black line here, it represents the stretch, okay, and how much greater a stretch. I won't get into these numbers, not even worth getting into, it's so high tech. Okay, so when the hips accelerate, you get this downward V. Okay, that means it's stretching. Okay, when as soon as the lower body slows down, you get a bigger V. Okay, so when you get this V and we draw a straight line straight down through here, okay, well it should be like that, sorry. Okay, soon as this slows down, this black line goes up, this can contract and it can accelerate the upper body. Okay, alright, so that's how we know, that's the perfect sequence and coordination of the muscles being contracted. And I mean, sequential timing is important. You can't see this by video and you can't see it by eye. So you never know. Someone could look like they're creating a great sequence, but they may not be using their muscles. Okay. So over here, if we have a look at Harry, this is the old one where I said his hips spin. So they spin, 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 spin. Okay. Because his hips spin, see he's getting no rate of stretch, so that's flat lines. And it sort of goes up a little bit because it slows down a little bit just here and gets a little bit of a contraction, but nothing really goes on. So basically what this graph's telling me is that Harry ain't using his muscles at all. Okay, he's not using them. Okay, so I know that we've got to train this area, so he's got nothing going on. Okay, now that we got him to use the ground better, so we'll just quickly have a look at a visual of his swing before. So he's in that bad mechanical position. But now we've got Harry in a better position here. Okay, he's in a better position so that the ground, now he's in a better position so that center of mass is in front of that center of pressure. Okay, it's not locked behind it. Okay, now when the ground's starting to push back at him, we're going to work on getting that ground to push back harder in this way and this way. Now he's in a better position. He's using the ground to accelerate and decelerate his hips a bit better. Okay, not perfect, but just enough to get the ball rolling. Okay, and that's something we've got to work on. Okay, so now he's in that better position. He can, rotate the hips. It stretches the core, and then he can begin to contract it. So let's just have a look at the improvements there. Okay. Okay, so over here now he's starting to get an acceleration, and then it slightly decelerates a bit. He's starting to get a downward trend. Okay, and if we draw a line down here, he's starting to get a little bit of a contraction. Okay, and there's a lot of work to do. So, and that reverts back to, remember I was trying to tell you I was trying to tell you that we're trying to get more hip acceleration. When we get more hip acceleration, deceleration, we're going to increase his V, and then he's going to get a better contraction. Okay, so there's a better pattern there for Harry. He's starting to develop this short stretch, and as this gets better, this is going to get better. Okay, just a quick summary is that we can look at physical limitations here. I won't get into it, but there's a torso load of 75, or is it 69? So that tells me that there's no physical limitations between his lower body and upper body. The rate of stretch at the moment, it can be better, but we won't get into that at the moment. The rate of shortening, that will improve as he starts to do it. That just tells me he's not using it at the moment. So we won't get into that, but we can measure the rate of how much stretch they're getting, okay, and how much shortening they're getting, okay. So we can really work on that, okay, and that's really important, but we won't get into that. Okay, now we're going to look at the arms. So this is measuring the arms, okay, and because his arms aren't quite behind the upper body yet, we're not going to really affect that. So essentially, again, if the arms accelerate, the upper body accelerates, the blue, and then the arms decelerate, the upper body accelerates and the arms accelerate off that, okay, and then decelerate. Alright, so what we'd get again is we'd get a little V like this, okay, again. So the stretching of the lats and the right arm, and then the contraction of it will accelerate the arms. Okay, so it's flat line, there's nothing there, and as you can see, even though the upper body, it's upper body and a little bit of arms, he's getting a little bit of stretch and a little bit of shorten, but very, very, very minimal. Okay, and that's still because we're not up to that stage yet, but that's part of the project to get that, and we'll work on that at the moment. So with Harry now, we want to get acceleration of the upper body, it to slow down, okay, so then he gets a stretch, then he gets to shorten, and then the arms accelerate, okay, and then it should be a straight line. Okay, and I mean, we've just got to look at this figure here. Again, there's no problems in his lats or his delts or anything like that, so that's good. So it's not going to affect it. It's just more of a coordination issue, and of course he's not getting a great, these numbers don't mesh up, it's very low, so it doesn't mesh up. Okay, so the next area we're going to work on with Harry is we're going to work on improving the stretch between his upper body and arms. But first we're going to get the ground right, then we'll work on the upper body, getting the lower body and upper body relationship, and then last we'll work on this. So the next lot of training we've got with Harry, we're going to really focus on the lower body, upper body stretch, and the ground forces and improving those. And then when that gets better, then we can work on the final piece of the upper body and arms. So I hope this gives you a better understanding of what the muscles do and how it all works. What I will say is that now you can see that you've got to measure all this, and it is a big project. So the next retest, I'll do some more videos on Harry and showing how he's going. So this is about the third set, so 8, 16, so 24 weeks in. This is the area when we're going to do it. So if you want to improve your movement, you can see that there's, you've got to dedicate a minimum of 26 weeks to get a progression, so about 6 months to get a lot of changes. But if you really want to look, change and improve your golf swing, look, you're looking at 12 months to 2 years. And I'm not saying that, it's not flat out or any hard. I mean, Harry just does his progressive skills training, takes him half an hour 3 times a week. Okay, and this is the improvements that he's getting. So I hope you enjoyed this video, and I hope you understand now why the upper body accelerates, decelerates, why the upper body and arms decelerate. Okay, so thank you very much for listening, and I hope you enjoyed it.
Hi Rob, it's easy for me to actually do a quick video, so I'll do a quick video because it's just too hard for me to explain in writing, and I don't want people to get the wrong idea of what I'm trying to say. What your client is what we call mechanical disadvantage. Okay, there's external hip rotation and internal hip rotation. Okay, first we have to understand why we shift weight. Okay, I don't like calling it that. It's just that everyone can relate to it. It's actually moving our center of mass. Okay, so it's a bit like baseball. It's like a baseball. The reason they pick their leg up, right, and they balance onto their right leg, and then if you've got them on a force plate, the center of pressure should be in roughly the arch of the foot, should be equilibrium. When they fall forward and the foot hits the ground and they move their center of mass forward, they shift weight forward. When your foot hits the ground, you can see my hips rotate. When they rotate, they stretch the core, and then when the ground pushes back at you as well, and then enables you, the lower body decelerates, enables you to contract the core. So it's a combination of the ground and the contraction of the core that makes the lower body decelerate. Okay, so what's happening with your client is that he's got an external rotation of the hips. So basically what happens is his leg's doing this. So what happens is now his center of mass is in a mechanical disadvantage to be able to push and shift weight. Okay, or to move. Okay, so he can create that forward momentum to push into the ground, to accelerate the pelvis, accelerate, decelerate, to contract the core. Okay, so basically what happens is an external rotation is when this leg moves, and internal rotation is when the femur don't move, but the center of mass still does. So there, I've now internally rotated. Now, my center of mass inside my center of pressure now can push forward. So if I quickly do a demonstration, you see the total differences. Okay, if I spin and I get myself in a mechanical disadvantage where my center of mass is over here, and you won't pick this up on pressure plates. Okay, it can give false readings. You know, that's the problem with pressure plates. You've got to understand what the data's saying, and there's a lot of information, even though it's measuring pressure, there's a lot of information we're missing. Okay, so if I do what your client's doing, I spin my leg back out of the way, I've got no connection with the ground. Okay, alright. You can see I've done spun out, slid, go on extension. Alright, I spin. Okay, because the only way I can create movement to try and move off here because I'm locked on my hip is to try and spin. Okay. The second demonstration now, if I'm in a mechanical disadvantage, you'll see my lower body accelerate, decelerate, and you'll see the core contract. If not, I can put this in 240 frames, you can see it a lot better. Okay, so now if I get a more mechanical mechanical advantage. That's not allowing me to grip the ground, there's a bit of a gap in there. Okay. So now if I push into the ground, right, and get a better mechanical position, right, I can brace everything. Okay. So I hope that all makes sense, Rob, is that he's getting external rotation, the femur's moving, he's not getting internal rotation of the hip, and he's not moving the centre of mass, he's not applying force down on the ground first. So if you push into the ground, you got force and you apply shear force, and you can internally rotate. He's externally rotating, so then he's got no choice but to spin. I hope that makes sense. If not, I could make a video and explain a little bit further more for you. Okay, mate, hope that helps.